Ambassador Duarte, thank you very much indeed for coming on the program.
Pleasure.
You were at the airport. You can hear the ambient noise over there. You're about to return to Brazil, but you had several meetings here for a day or so. Could you tell us what that entailed, the beginning of something in relationship between Rwanda and Brazil? Please explain that if you would.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's actually my first trip to Rwanda, and this is also the first occasion that both our governments had to hold political consultations. As you may know, Brazil and Rwanda established resident embassies very recently. Rwanda, actually before Brazil, and in 2023. Then Minister Biruta visited Brazil, and the decision was taken to establish resident embassies in both countries. Rwanda started with the designation of an ambassador, and more recently Brazil also designated an ambassador resident here in Kigali, Ambassador Irene Gala. So many issues are really to be discussed, and both countries have extensive agendas, and this political consultation is, let's say, the first occasion at this level to discuss our agenda and to see where we can progress further quicker.
So it's a beginning of something, and without intruding into still to be discussed confidential matters, could you tell us the results of the consultations, what it is that you've established so far, and what you expect to see going forward?
Yes. Well, we recently signed agreements at ministerial levels on the margins of other meetings, international meetings, basically in the areas of agriculture, of education, and of health. These issues are very significant, I think, for both countries. In the case of education and health, we note that Rwanda has universal health and education. So this is like Brazil. Brazil also has that. So we can very much benefit from the experiences that we have had so far in implementing these policies. In the case of agriculture, Brazil, as you know, is a big agricultural country, a big exporter. Rwanda has also its own production, and a lot of cooperation can take place in terms of the types of technologies that Brazil has developed. And also we can also benefit from the experiences of Rwanda, and also a lot of possible business opportunities. Rwanda is a country that is distinguishing itself in terms of its business friendliness. So we have already had some expressions of interest on the part of Brazilian businesses to establish themselves here. But this is not limited to these areas. I mean, Brazil is also like an important plane manufacturer. Embraer, a Brazilian company, makes some very competitive commercial planes, and Rwanda, having a national airline, may be interested in also considering these planes. So there's a vast array of areas where we can develop our relations further.
You mentioned the words big and vast. That's almost a description of Brazil. So what is it? Correct me if I'm wrong here, around about 200 million people.
Yes.
And a huge, almost a subcontinent. It's hugely important environmentally. You have the Amazon, of course, so-called the lungs of the world, the lungs of the planet. And Rwanda is hugely an important nation actually in environmental awareness. So is there any kind of discussions that you have had or you see having in a way that both countries learn from each other to help what is a global issue?
Yes, well, definitely. That it's a global issue, but it's an issue that is also tackled locally. And one thing that also immediately impresses people who come from other countries is that, for example, you have a ban of plastics, which is one...
Since 2008.
That's right. Yeah. Which is a local, let's say, solution to one of the environmental problems that exist. We have many types of actions that we are taking in Brazil with regard to energy transition, with regard to new technologies, with regard to, let's say, alternatives to fossil fuels, so as to reduce the impact of carbon emissions. And this is the big challenge that we have ahead of us in a major event that will take place next month, November, in Belém. That's a northern city in the Amazon forest region. That is COP30. I mean, that big event, and we received actually here during the consultations that the Ministry of the Environment of Rwanda will be attending. So that's also something that shows, I think, the importance that Rwanda also is attributing to this environmental issue.
I mean, I have a sort of fanciful idea, really, which is that less advanced nations have a bit of an advantage in development, in the sense that they don't have to repeat the mistakes that more advanced nations have made. So if Rwanda, for instance, has got a number of things that it has to do, which is providing housing for people, it's still extending it's done extraordinarily well in extending energy and water and services to people from 2% to about 80+% in a short space of time. But all of this stuff is very, very difficult to achieve in a way that is sustainable, and going back to the idea of the environment. Now, Brazil has been there. It's made great advances, but with great advances, usually look back and say, maybe we should have done better here or better there. I mean, a very good example is in the United States, for instance. There are a lot of issues with water supply because of the lead pipes, which can be toxic. Now, a country that is still laying those pipes can look and say, let's avoid those mistakes. So if you look at the development of Rwanda, and again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, and you look at where Brazil has got to, what would you say to people like developers of housing or hydro engineers, or where you can say to them that look at what we've done and avoid this or do better here?
Well, I think over the years, as you say, a number of decisions were made to, let's say, you mentioned hydroelectric dams. That hydroelectric dams used to be constructed in a certain fashion that not only emitted gases just to manufacture the concrete and things like that, but also the environmental impact used to be much greater than it is today. So a lot of regulations have been put into place to contain these effects and to mitigate them, if possible, of course. So the new, let's say, over the years, Brazil, I think, has developed a number of alternatives, not to actually using hydropower, but to minimize the type of impact that this may have on the environment. And if you think that, yes, in this case or in others, we may have experience that derives from our own, not really mistakes, but let's say decisions that were made at the time when we didn't know.
Yeah.
That
was the knowledge available at the
that's
time.
right,
Yeah.
or at least not as fully as today. What kind of impact this may have? I mean, Brazil also suffered a lot with, let's say, residues from mining.
Yes.
That a particular mine was exploited in a particular way, and the residues were just sort of placed somewhere
in the rivers, yeah.
in a way that became, or maybe contained, but contained in a way that at one point there was a rupture, and then you have this huge environmental impact, and with causing, I mean, a lot of damage, and even at the cost of many lives. So I mean, we wouldn't recommend this to be done, not just in Brazil, anywhere else. And there are ways of doing things that don't have this kind of environmental impact. So in this sense, yes, I mean, our experience can be shared, and I'm sure that by doing so, we will be able to help other countries in avoiding some types of mistakes that really were made.
I mean, this thought comes to me, there is a tendency within human developments in various nations to almost constantly reinvent the wheel. So one nation does something else, and then another nation simply goes through the same process to make the same mistakes. So I suppose my idea is that if you're still to get to a certain stage of development, a certain stage of advancement, you look at what others have done and what you can learn from them to do things quicker in a more sustainable way. And of course, times are different now. There's great awareness of sustainability and so on. So in a way, Brazil has gone through all of these things, and it is, as I say, a hugely important part of the world environmentally. So that and Rwanda is very much probably one of the most environmentally aware nations on the planet at the moment. So that link, I was trying to see how that link can be made and strengthened and also implemented really technically.
Yes, well, we live in an age where communication is much easier. It's everywhere. So we can always know what was done in the past and learn from it. Also, we live in an age where countries have come together to cooperate a lot. So one example is the social economic agenda that of the United Nations. I mean, the Sustainable Development Goals. So we do have roadmaps on where we want to go. The challenges are in implementing those goals in a way that is compatible with the capacities of the different countries. But learning from each other is always let's say a win-win proposition, and I think that's why irrespective of the size of the countries, if the problems are similar that we're trying to solve, and these are development problems that we're talking about, or even economic problems or environmental problems, or social issues, we can always do better. And this is why it's so important for us to maintain and to sustain and to increase the dialogue that we have.
So could you explain why you thought it was important to begin with Rwanda, and what you saw in it and what you expect it, what you hope will continue from it?
Well, Brazil's interest in Africa is very long-standing and historical. But during President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's government, this has been more pronounced. President Lula has had 2 previous mandates. This is his 3rd mandate. And one of the very clear directives that he gave in this 3rd mandate, he had already done that in the 2 past mandates, was to give priority to Africa. Now, Africa is a big
Vast.
continent.
Yeah.
And we, of course, have had maybe more intense relations with certain regions of Africa or certain countries. We have had very varied interactions with African countries in general. In this part of Africa, Rwanda was one of the countries that we hadn't been able to give, let's say, a more focused approach to our foreign policy. And fortunately, we are in the process of overcoming that, and the opening of the 2 resident embassies is a major step, because now we have a Rwandan ambassador in Brazil, who's very, very active, very able, and a Brazilian ambassador here, also very interested, very able in developing all these fronts that with other countries we may already have, but with Rwanda, as with any country, are specific to that country. So this is what we are doing. I mean, it may be a start of sorts with Rwanda because of the resident embassies, but we see here many things, and Rwanda certainly probably sees in Brazil the same things that it does already with other countries that it can do better or differently with Brazil.
Now, the ambassador, the Rwandan ambassador in Brazil,
Yeah.
is going to have quite a job understanding and knowing the country because of its size, because of its complexity. If you are in the Rwandan ambassador's shoes, what would you say would be the first most important things in understanding Brazil and getting the most out of this relationship?
Well, I think I would do probably as he's doing right now. He is visiting some places beyond the Brazilian capital, cities like São Paulo, which is the business center of Brazil, but not just São Paulo, I mean other large cities in Brazil. He is identifying the areas where Brazil and Rwanda have a lot to gain from developing their business advantages, and he's also being a very good interlocutor in terms of the political issues that are important to this part of the world and to Rwanda in particular, and also understanding the political issues that are currently on Brazil's internal and external agenda, and of course reporting over to the Rwandan government on those.
Yeah. Now, the understanding of Rwanda and Brazil, I expect it's at a very low level. As, to be fair, is the understanding of Brazil in Rwanda. So again, you're in the Rwandan ambassador's shoes. What is the best way of going about getting Brazilians, especially those in business, those in manufacturing, those in development, to understand Rwanda better and to see the possibilities so that they can engage as well as both countries?
Well, the first thing is to showcase your country in another way, and that's very much a job for an ambassador to do. You have to sort of inform on what are the specificities of your country, what are the opportunities, what are the advantages for in all fields. One, maybe we haven't spoken about it, but one which is obvious is, of course, tourism. Without that, well, people know very little, or even less than they normally do about a country. This country has specific attractions with regard to its natural heritage, with regard to its installed, say, hotel, restaurant, and other services capacities, and with its very unique and diversified landscape that is in some ways similar to Brazil, but in other ways very different. I mean, you have different types of fauna here, for example. Even though some, let's say, ecosystems are not so different in terms of rainforests, etc., but in terms of altitude, I mean, it's very different from Brazil. So that is an area where certainly Brazilians will become more familiarized with Rwanda, if you showcase more of your country, and vice versa. I mean, Rwandans probably only have let's say, a general idea of what is Brazil. But I think both Brazil and Rwanda have been making efforts to, for example, have events take place here. We will have just 2 weeks from now one important event here on telecommunications, and you will have many people from all over the world, including from Brazil. Our director for the National Regulation Agency for Telecommunication, for example, and that will probably be more familiarized with the kind of situation that you have in this country. Likewise, Brazil, we talked about COP30, but over the last 2-3 years, we have also been hosting, for example, the G20 with some other invited countries, the BRICS with other invited countries. So that also helps in terms of showing the world what our countries can offer.
You mentioned the BRICS, and this is, of course, it's a large area of itself, and it's reshaping international relations, global relations. So, again, what would you say that a country that is relatively small as Rwanda can play within the BRICS arena? How would it best approach it when you have these relations with one of the major BRICS countries like Brazil?
Well, BRICS today are a very large share of world's GDP, if you take the BRICS countries. And in 2023, this group, which originally was composed of 5 countries, has been expanded. Today, 9+ partner countries. So it's a group that has expanded, and it offers very large markets, very large opportunities, and very significant growth rates if you take the aggregate of the BRICS countries. And this is not just common of, let's say, the developing countries that are part of BRICS, but is common of other countries that are not necessarily part of BRICS, but are also experiencing very high growth rates, such as Rwanda. And the BRICS would offer like an alternative to these countries, that both in terms of investment and business opportunities, but also for those countries to look at other countries in the South that offer today perhaps the greatest opportunities because of their growth rates, because of their potential, because of their demographics and the relatively young populations that they have. And this is particularly applicable to Africa because it's a young continent, not just very populous continent, but a young population with a very high growth potential. So all business people, one way or another, are looking at not just the BRICS countries, but let's say developing countries and Africa in particular.
Now, another area of cooperation, of course, is culture and sport. How do you see it in Brazil to begin with, and how you think it can be part of that cooperation with Rwanda?
Well, sports is something that brings people together. Maybe Brazil is not as good as it used to be, but it's still of course, still not bad. Yeah. But it's very competitive. I'm talking about football, but it's also big business today, and it's very much private clubs that have become major players. I mean, if you take out if you take out the World Cup, that you have the national teams, and well, the next one we're looking forward to it, of course, partly played here, and of course, and again with the ease of communications, today we can follow all the regional tournaments, including the African Cup, and it's an area where government does have a say, but I think the private sector and the private clubs are the ones that really drive very much this movement. Brazil has been active in cooperation also in this area, which is related to culture in a certain way. And that's another area where we have to, I think, do more between our countries. Yeah.
The style of football in Brazil was more akin to, I say was because, as you say, it's slightly changed now, but it was more akin to the style of football in Africa to begin with, and that got them, I was going to say very far, but it got them as farther than anybody else. So can we see some Brazilian players playing in Rwanda and then redeveloping that style of football? Because I think Africans have also lost their, innate style a little bit more. It's more the European style now, both in Brazil and I think in Africa. Without presuming too much expertise here, I think that Brazil did better when it had its own style, which is akin to the African style.
Well, I think what you're saying about the Brazilian football playing style being a very particular one at one point in time is in a way epitomized by Pelé, and we are very happy to see that one stadium here is named after him, because we all identify with Pelé. And I was fortunate enough to actually, see him play, that era of Brazilian football, I think, is remembered by all those who actually lived during that time, and today can still revive it through videos and films. I don't know if we can really recreate it.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that Rwandans have everything it takes to develop major football players, because they have the passion, they have the interest, and they have I think the power to do so.
And they have the climate
as well. Yes, and the climate. And so I wouldn't, doesn't necessarily take to have a Brazilian player here to teach Rwandans anything that they don't already know and can develop much further.
Yeah. On that note, Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.